Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and I hope your Friday is off to a good start. So, a bunch of you missed yesterday because of your APUSH exam. I'm sure you all got 5s on it, so I'm very pleased with all of you, but you did miss the introduction to the annotated bibliography. Some of you were here, so basically what I want to do is spend the first 10 or 15 minutes doing a little bit of a recap from yesterday, explaining the annotated bib. There will be some new information, but if you feel very confident about the annotated bibliography and you've started it, you know what to do, and you just want to work on it and mute me, my feelings won't be hurt. You can do that. If you weren't here yesterday, though, stick around because I'll explain what the annotated bibliography is, what my specific requirements are for it, and I'll give you an example of a good annotation and a bad annotation so you know what you should be aiming for. So that's our main goal, is to use the databases today to begin collecting secondary sources that we can use in our bibliographies. As a reminder, your discussion posts were due this morning. So if you didn't get a chance to do those because you were working on AP exams, don't worry about that. If you missed anything because of APs, I'm not going to take off points, but you will have to, use our time in class wisely to catch up. Okay. Any questions for me before we move on? Okay. Why don't I begin by showing you an example of what an annotated bibliography looks like, what your end goal is. So here's an annotated bib that one of my 12th graders made. And you can see at the top, it just says works cited. This looks like a normal MLA citation for a works cited page. And really that's what it is. It's a works cited page, but maybe you could think of it as a fancy works cited page. It's a works cited page with extra information of your own writing. So if you take that phrase, annotated bibliography, a bibliography is the same as a reference page, is the same as a works cited page, all different names for the same thing. So you've made works cited pages before, that you should be familiar with. Annotations you've done before, probably as an assignment where a teacher said, here's a story, annotate this, write your ideas in the margin. Really, annotation just refers to marking something up with your own ideas. So this is a little more of a formal process of doing that. It's still a text that you're marking up. In this case, the text is your works cited page, and what you're marking it up with is a formal paragraph about that citation. So the goal is for you to show me evidence that you've read and understood your source, and also for you to think through and process that source so you understand it, and so you can pluck evidence from there to strengthen your research paper. That's the idea here. So what exactly should you put in these annotations? All the details of the assignment are laid out in the annotated bibliography assignment in our most recent module. Let me show you that. So you could click on that here. And this goes through basically everything that I'm telling you now if you forget anything. So for this assignment, you need to have at least 5 sources. 5 sources, 5 paragraph annotations per source. All of those sources should be taken from the databases. In a second, I'll talk about how to get those, which ones to choose. The annotations themselves, again, 1 paragraph. Please don't think that you have to go above and beyond and write 2 or 3 paragraphs. I want them to be 1. I want you to keep it concise, basically. And the paragraphs should accomplish 2 goals. Number 1, it should summarize the main argument presented in that article, in the source. So you're putting the thesis in your own words. You're also describing any of the interesting points that the author brings up. 2, you're going to describe how you can use that source to aid your own paper. And in this case, I'm okay with you using I or me. You might have a phrase where you say, for my own art, in my own paper, I'm going to use this article to make the point that blah, 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 blah. That kind of language is fine. So your annotations should be about 100 to 200 words in length, one paragraph. The best annotations will include some quotes from the article. Again, it's about showing me that you've read it, and quotes are just the best way to do that. So 5 total. And the nice thing about this assignment is it's very streamlined. There's a step-by-step process that you can follow. And if you follow this process, it should be pretty easy to do. I mean, basically it comes down to first you make a works cited page, and then you type up your own ideas. So I would find your 5 sources first before you read them all thoroughly. So find your 5, make your works cited page, and then go back and read them one by one, and then write your summaries for each as you go. So the way I'm going to grade this is a 25-point quiz grade. Each citation, each source is going to be worth 5 points. So I'll grade them out of 5. If it's great, everything's there, it's a 5 out of 5. If it's missing something or inadequate in some way, it'll be a 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5, so on. The whole thing's due on Wednesday, the 12th by midnight. Any questions at this point? Okay, great. So the way that I would recommend you making this works cited page is by using Noodle Tools. We've talked about Noodle Tools with the op-ed. I know people don't like Noodle Tools, but the fact of the matter is Noodle Tools will save you a lot of work. Even though, like today with my 12th graders, even though I don't assign them to use Noodle Tools, I noticed I was helping a bunch of students who were using it because they know it makes life easier. So I would here I'm telling you, you should use it. What you're going to do is find your articles. And the nice thing about our databases and Noodle Tools is you can automatically send the citation from the article into Noodle Tools, save it there, so you don't have to format anything. You don't have to worry about it if a comma is in the right place. It does all of that for you automatically. You just have to click a few buttons. Some of you might know how to do that and might be very comfortable with it. For some of you, you might say, Noodle Tools is a traumatic memory. It's deeply suppressed in my subconscious. I don't want to go there, or maybe I've never used Noodle Tools before. So rather than spending time explaining it to everyone here on Zoom, I made a video that goes through how to import articles from the databases to Noodle Tools. So if this sounds all foreign to you and you don't know what I'm talking about, click on this link, watch that video, and that should explain everything that you'll need to do to make the works cited page. All right, let me see here. I guess next up, I just want to touch on the databases. So I've also linked to them. So find that link, library, literary criticism databases. And there are going to be 3 main databases that you're going to use for this project: Literary Sources, JSTOR, and Gale Virtual Reference Library. Okay. They're all databases, these collections of essays, but they differ slightly. So I would say the one that'll be most accessible for you, the one with articles that'll be the easiest to understand, might be a good starting point, is Gale Virtual Reference Library. It's sort of like an encyclopedia for short stories and literature, and it's created with students in mind. So you can click on this. There will be an entry on your story. That's a place to begin, and that's something you could cite. Next, I would go to Literary Sources. This is more of a traditional database, still a little bit more focused on students, but you'll come across some essays there that are relatively easy to understand. Some of them might be a little more advanced. And then from there, you can try JSTOR if you're not coming up with any hits. JSTOR is one of the most commonly used databases in college. I'm pretty confident that at some point, years from now, you'll end up having to write a paper in college and you'll have to use JSTOR. Very widely used around the country. Most of the articles and essays, though, are more designed for a college level audience. There are going to be some there that you could understand, but some of them might be challenging. Just keep that in mind. But if you want to challenge yourself, you could read this. They have of all of these, they're going to have the most articles. So one thing also I want to take a second to comment on is what this is titled literature criticism. And that phrase might seem a little strange, and I'm going to throw that phrase around a lot, literary criticism or your lit crit essays. So there are certain things that are considered literary criticism, certain essays that are considered literary criticism. Those are the ones that I want you to use. So let me share like a definition of that. So by literary criticism, I'm not talking about criticism by the definition of making fun of someone or pointing out the flaws in something. That's not really what it means. It's an older definition of criticism. It means an article that analyzes a piece of literature. You could kind of think of it as literary analysis. They used to use this term criticism. Okay. So it's an essay or an article that's published that offers an interpretation of a text. It's an argument that says this is what this text means. It's published in an academic journal, which is sort of like a magazine filled with articles written by experts, scholars, professors, and they've all been peer reviewed, which means that other people have read these articles, other experts, they've proofread them, they've said, hey, this is all good, this all makes sense, it's thoroughly researched, we give this our stamp of approval. So you know that what's in there isn't crap. It's a very difficult month-long process to get something published in this. So it's not like someone's blog where you could just open up the blog and put whatever you want on there. And it's written by an expert, not necessarily a professor, but in most cases, a professor or expert, someone who studies this stuff for a living. Okay. So that's why we use this, because whenever you want information about any topic, you should go to the experts. That's not to say that experts are always right, but compared to going to the general public or some random person on the internet, you are much more likely to find good information from an expert, someone who's trained in this field. All right, let me pause once again. Any questions at this point? Well, so last thing I want to do is show you a couple of examples of what an annotation for this assignment might look like. So let's pretend that I'm a student writing a research paper on Araby, and I made my research question, what connection is there between Irish identity and paralysis? So here would be one take on that. I'll let you read this on your own. This I would give a 1 out of 5 if I were reading this in someone's annotated bib. So what do you think is lacking here? Why wouldn't this get a higher score? Okay, someone in the chat says it's more a summary than anything else. Yeah, in Araby, the young boy travels east to get to the Araby because he wants to get Magnus' sister. This is really just, the second sentence is really just summary. So that's a major problem with it. Anything else you noticed wrong? Yeah, Dave? Yeah, no quotes. I mean, not having a quote like you could write a really good 5 out of 5 annotation without a quote, but I would like to see quotes, and I think the best ones will have it. And definitely that's going to be a marker of weaker annotations. But I do want to say, like, you could use a quote in an annotation and it could still be bad if everything else in the annotation is bad. So I think using quotes is necessary but not sufficient to have a high quality annotation. Yeah, Joy. Right, exactly. Like what does this mean? I have no idea what that means. What is the deeper meaning here? How does it connect? Why is that important? Note that this is okay. Like again, I don't mind if you use my or personal pronouns and adjectives like that, but you should specify how this is useful. At the end of the day, a good annotation is going to show me that you've read it. If I had not read this article, I could have written this. You know, like there's no information here that shows an understanding of what the psychic geography of Joyce's Dubliners is about. So this would get a 1 for that reason. So this would be a better one. This is a bit in depth. You don't have to be this extensive to get a 5 out of 5, but this would be something better to aim for. So I'll give you a minute now to read this. In what way does this improve on that first annotation? Obviously, it's longer and more detailed, but beyond that, what do you think, Joy? Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I'm using this as like, something that I want you to do, but you know, fair enough if you feel like it goes into too much detail. Hey, Anna. But it does, all of this is like what's in the essay. So the first sentence talks about the thesis. In this case, this article is making the point that you see the words east and west show up all over the place in Dubliners. When the word east shows up, it's usually about a character who's looking east because they want to escape from Dublin into some other world, right? And so that's basically what the article is about. And then we provide some examples of that using quotes and details. And the last sentence is, you know, talking about how it's going to connect back. But there's precision and like, here's the exact claim. This article, the thesis is that, you know, movement along cardinal directions represents the character's desire to escape Ireland. The author makes these points about Araby representing Arabia and this faraway exotic location, but the boy can never get there, right? So I'm transferring the information, summarizing the information from the article, and then I'm explaining, hey, this is the one bit that I'm going to use to support my research question. And I just want to note, you know, the length here. So this one's 200 words. So this is like, I would say about as long as you should write your annotation. And again, you could make yours a little shorter and it could still get a 5 out of 5. And this one though is 68 words. so not reaching the 100-word threshold. So I just want to make a point, because sometimes students think, well, if I want to get a good grade, I should just write as many words as possible. And that's not necessarily the case. You want to, reach the minimum number of words, but writing 4 times the amount of content isn't better if your content isn't good. So, quality is more important than quantity. Just keep that in mind. But you do need to hit a minimum threshold of quantity. Yeah. All right, so hopefully that distinction between these two helps you make sense of what I'd like to see in the assignment. So for the duration of the period, here's what you can work on and go through. It kind of depends on where you are right now in the process. So a lot of you still have not yet completed your research question. So that should be your first priority. If that's not done, finish that today. It shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes if you've read the story. So decide on that, get that submitted to Canvas. 2, write your discussion post and peer response if you haven't yet. Don't forget, you're not uploading this in the assignment page. You have to go click on discussions on the left-hand side of the screen. Pick the discussion board for your story and upload it there. Only then would I start looking around the databases for your 5 secondary sources. And then if you find your 5 and make your Works Cited page, then you could start writing your annotation. Okay, questions for me? Okay, well, go ahead and begin. I'll be here if you need any help.